When I was a watercolor beginner, I didn't feel creatively fulfilled by following tutorials for very long. It didn't matter how well I painted them, the art wasn't mine. I really wanted to create my own original artwork, but I couldn't find a lot of guidance on how to do that. So I promised myself when I figured it out, I would share what I learned with others. That's why I created this channel. In this video, I want to walk you through my evolution as a watercolor artist and how I went from copying tutorials to making my own original art. I think most of us start painting because we have our own ideas we want to paint, but we get stuck following tutorials and relying on step-by-step instructions. I think this is especially true in the watercolor world where there are so many different techniques to learn and many different ways to approach a painting. I believe you can't truly find your style and develop it until you start creating original work. My style really started to develop and my paintings really started to feel like me when I leaned into the subjects that inspire me, like plants, birds, and sea life, and the techniques I love to paint with, like negative painting and playing with texture. I'm going to break this up into 5 stages, and I think you'll see as we go through how moving through these stages helped me further develop my style and start creating original artwork. Your journey won't be exactly like mine, but I hope by sharing this, it will encourage you to find your own path to make original art. I want you to watch this video all the way through and see what stage you're in now and what stage you want to get to. Whatever stage you're in right now, I have some resources and tips to help you move to the next stage. When you're a beginner, I think it's important to use tutorials as stepping stones, not crutches. You can use tutorials to learn techniques, but also you should use them to learn what you do and do not want to paint. Pay close attention to the subjects and techniques that light you up, and then find more tutorials that will help you develop in those areas. When I started out, I was certain I wanted to paint realistic animals and botanicals like these. But it turns out I didn't enjoy the process of painting realistically as much as I thought I would. As you'll see in the upcoming stages, I continued painting these subjects, but experimented with the style until I found something that felt more like me. I recommend trying a whole bunch of tutorials on different subjects and techniques so you can find out where you want to go deeper. If you're in this stage, check out my Watercolor for Beginners playlist and my free library of watercolor tutorials and templates. Now, I think most people stay in this stage for too long or they never move out of it. There's always going to be more techniques to learn, but I think your art will improve faster if you move out of this stage. If you're itching to paint your own ideas and you have a good grasp on the basic wet on wet and wet on dry techniques, then you're ready to move beyond beginner. Keep watching to see what to do next. When I was ready to branch out from tutorials, I started painting reference photos. At first, I used the skills and techniques I learned in tutorials, but applied them to my own subjects. For example, after watching a tutorial on how to paint a boat, I applied the process to paint a different boat. I found a different reference photo that had a boat style and a color palette that I liked more than the tutorial, and then I painted from it following what I had learned in the tutorial. At this stage, I was still painting mostly realism because I was trying to closely copy the reference photos. I also started painting from my own photos without a tutorial to help me, so I had to make up my own steps. I used to write down detailed notes about the colors that I planned to use and how I planned to paint the image. More often than not, I didn't have all the steps figured out at the beginning. I just took it one layer at a time. The biggest challenge in this stage is not having someone else give you step-by-step instructions or tell you what colors you should be using. I spent a lot more time in this stage painting value studies and swatching out colors, and I would paint the same photo over and over again. It takes persistence, but it's a really good way to learn and to see your progress. When you have a failed painting, I think the worst thing you can do is not make another attempt. You can learn from your mistakes and try again, maybe multiple times. It took me several attempts to pull off this pool painting. It took me a few tries to get the colors right, and then I was still messing up the shadows, so I had to keep trying again and again. Along the way, I let go of painting it realistically, and the final painting has a more illustrative feel to it, which I really love. With practice, I got more comfortable painting from reference photos and started doing larger and more complex subjects. Painting a variety of different subjects from reference is another great way to learn what subjects you do and do not enjoy painting. This mountain lion was the last realistic animal painting I did because it wasn't a process I enjoyed. For a while, I fell into a trap of painting things like this just to prove I could do it. But it's not my style. Plants are more my thing. This is a more recent painting I did from one of my photos, and it's much more my style. If you want to start painting from reference photos, check out my video, How to Design a Painting from a Photo, for a simple 5-step process to turn any photo into a beautiful painting. I want you to know I didn't get to where I am today without failures. I didn't go from following a step-by-step tutorial painting something like this straight to the framed jungle paintings on my wall. My first attempt at a jungle painting was a disaster. Then I tried a different technique that I loved, but my first attempt still wasn't the best. I just kept trying to analyze what worked and what didn't work so I could keep learning what I could do differently for the next painting. That's how I got to my frame-worthy paintings. Before I move on, I just want to pause here and mention that these stages aren't really linear. I go back and do tutorials and classes all the time. I also regularly challenge myself to do paintings that are beyond my current skill level or in a different style. Sometimes I fail, and sometimes I discover that I'm ready to move out of my comfort zone and up level. In the next 3 stages, I really started making art that felt like me. This blue jay painting was a big turning point for me. This was a deeply personal painting that I did in memory of my late sister. I had a very clear vision of what I wanted to paint, but I couldn't find a reference photo that had all the right elements. So I combined 2 different reference photos for the blue jay, and then I improvised the entire background. Instead of painting trees or leaves in the background, I created a beautiful bokeh effect. At this stage, I stopped copying reference photos and started transforming them to add my own style. This is where I started deviating from realism. I took creative license to change colors, change backgrounds, and add texture. This sand dollar painting is a great example. I looked at reference photos to draw the sand dollar shapes, but I arranged them in my own composition, and I used negative painting to render them. If you want to learn this technique, check out my full step-by-step tutorial. I drew my own monstera plant for this painting, but I didn't want to paint it realistically. Instead, I used more vibrant colors that flow together through the maze of leaves. Watch my video on the best watercolor supply you're not using to see how I did it. This koi fish painting is one of the class projects in my course, Creative Textures for Watercolor. I used a reference image to draw the koi fish, but I completely stylized the background. I also used some texture effects to stylize the details on the koi fish. If you want to start stylizing your paintings, my Creative Textures for Watercolor course is for you. You'll learn how to use watercolor texture effects in paintings like this koi fish. It's the perfect introduction to stylizing a reference photo to make it your own. And the course includes loads of inspiration and encouragement to find the texture effects that you love so you can use them to personalize your art. Pretty soon, I started deviating even further from the reference photo, sometimes not using a reference at all. I started freehand painting without even a drawing to follow. In this stage, I started developing my negative painting style using layers of masking fluid. I started with only a basic contour drawing of these starfish, but I painted all the other details freehand. Instead of copying the reference photo, I used a gradient of colors and values to make the glowing starfish. You might recognize these from the cover of my free ebook, Masking Magic. You can grab it at the link in the video description. For these jungle and plant paintings that I have hanging behind me, I didn't use a drawing at all. Instead, I looked at several reference photos while I painted. The end result is less accurate and maybe a little quirky, but these paintings feel so much more alive to me. If you want to learn more about the process I use to develop these paintings, grab my free ebook, Masking Magic, at the link below. Once I got more comfortable with freehand painting, I started exploring abstract painting. I started making more imaginative and intuitive paintings. I love combining negative painting with abstract, textured backgrounds. I usually paint the backgrounds first, and then I decide later what to paint on top. These types of paintings have tons of personality. One of the things I miss the most about making mixed media collages is these kinds of texture effects. So I found ways to create similar effects in watercolor. Now I like to incorporate more pattern and texture into my watercolor paintings. This abstract landscape painting is one of the class projects in my course, Creative Textures for Watercolor. It's a completely intuitive process. If you want to try your hand at abstract painting, you'll enjoy Creative Textures for Watercolor. There are 2 abstract class projects in the course. Right now, I go back and forth between stages 3, 4, and 5. Sometimes I like to work from a reference photo, and sometimes I want to do something more abstract. It really depends on my mood. Painting from a reference photo is a longer, more detailed process for me. In between those paintings, I like to do something loose and fun that doesn't involve drawing. And of course, I'm spending a lot of my creative time these days making these videos for you. I hope you enjoyed this walkthrough of my journey as a watercolor artist. If you're ready to move beyond beginner and start designing your own paintings, the video you should watch next is how to design a painting from a photo. If you want to start stylizing your paintings to make them truly unique, check out my course, Creative Textures for Watercolor. Look for the link below the video.